My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is The Library of Return, The Emergence Blueprint by Jason Gray. Quote, "The collapse was never the end of humanity. It was the pressure chamber that forced the species to remember what it truly was." And you know what else is kind of funny? When I started this little quest of mine on YouTube, uh, almost, let's see, it's 9 years ago now, 9 years ago, I said that I wanted to discover the truth of who I am, what we all actually are, right? Because I knew we were so much more than we'd ever allowed ourselves to believe. And the very fact that this says the collapse was never the end of humanity, it was the pressure chamber that forced the species to remember what it truly was. The eighth subsurface library did not arrive with fear. It arrived with recognition. After the chamber of collapse exposed the machinery of the overlay, humanity entered a period unlike anything recorded in modern history. Something strange began happening across the earth. People stopped feeling emotionally synchronized with the world around them. The routines that once felt normal suddenly felt empty. Artificial environments became psychologically exhausting. Many people lost interest in endless stimulation almost overnight. Others began withdrawing from noise, conflict, superficiality, and digital saturation without fully understanding why. Millions described the exact same sensation. It feels like something inside of me is waking up. Wow, wonder where we've heard that before. The planetary mind identified the phenomenon immediately. The return sequence had begun. The species was entering the emergence phase. LIB-08 return. The recovery architecture beneath the collapse. Buried beneath the deepest coherence chambers of the earth existed a structure unlike every other library in the planetary archive system. The previous chambers preserved memory. The Library of Return preserved direction. It contained the recovery architecture of the species itself, the blueprint. The chamber stored the complete emergence pathways for humanity after fragmentation collapse. The ancient keepers once referred to it as, quote, "the chamber that opens when the species chooses coherence over fear." Unlike the other libraries, this chamber could not open through curiosity alone. The species had to reach precise resonance conditions first. The Earth grid had to partially reactivate. The emotional field had to begin decompressing. The planetary mind had to stabilize. Humanity had to perceive the overlay consciously. And most importantly, the species had to become exhausted enough by fragmentation that it finally desired truth more than comfort. Only then could the return blueprint emerge safely into the collective field. The first phase of return, LIB-08.01, the reversal signal. The first transmission did not arrive intellectually. It arrived biologically. The nervous system itself began changing. People experienced overwhelming internal reversals. Long-held fears suddenly weakened. Artificial ambitions lost emotional intensity. The endless chase for stimulation began collapsing psychologically. Many people no longer desired constant noise, constant validation, constant competition, constant distraction, or endless acceleration. For the first time in generations, the species began moving inward again. This frightened civilization tremendously because modern systems depended upon perpetual fragmentation to sustain themselves. But the return sequence had already activated, and once activated, the nervous system begins seeking coherence automatically. Awakening was never information. LIB-RET.02, the false idea of enlightenment. One of the deepest chambers revealed a truth humanity had misunderstood for centuries. Awakening was never primarily intellectual. It was never about collecting information, theories, ideologies, secret knowledge, or spiritual identity structures. True awakening occurs when the nervous system itself begins remembering coherence directly. The species mistook awakening for belief. The library revealed awakening as restoration. This explained why so many people undergoing the return phase experienced intense emotional shifts. Their bodies were recalibrating. Their perception bandwidth was widening again. Now, several years ago, I got the message that part of my pain was because what I called the central nervous system, which what I view as the communication superhighway, right, of the body, was widening. So that's kind of interesting that they say it like that. Their bodies were recalibrating, their perception bandwidth was widening again. Their systems were beginning to reject fragmentation physically. Many people experienced heightened emotional sensitivity, deep exhaustion around artificial environments, collapse of false identity structures, increased dream activity, unusual perception shifts, intensified intuition, and overwhelming longing for authenticity. Civilization interpreted these systems as dysfunction. The library identified them as emergence mechanics. The species was not breaking, it was decompressing. The collapse had purpose. LIB-RET.02 LIB-08, the compression theory. Then the chamber revealed something so profound it altered humanity's understanding of history completely. The collapse itself had evolutionary function. The fracture forced humanity into conditions that eventually made conscious coherence possible. The pre-fall civilization possessed harmony naturally. The returning civilization would achieve harmony consciously. That difference changed everything. And you know, Lisa and I used to have conversations, it's been a very long time ago now, whereby one of the things she used to say was that we are dying and being reborn in our very shoes. You see, this is what I'm being shown now. What my inner guidance says, A, you don't know what you don't know. And B, it turns out you can relax because you do know. What you do know, you do know. You may not think you know, but you do know. Oh, it's just a little maddening, isn't it? Wow. And the fracture forced humanity into conditions that eventually made conscious coherence possible. The pre-fall civilization possessed harmony naturally. The returning civilization would achieve harmony consciously. That difference changed everything. The species had to fully experience separation, fear, fragmentation, isolation, artificiality, identity fixation, and perceptual distortion before it could choose coherence freely rather than inherit it unconsciously. The collapse was not meaningless suffering. It was evolutionary compression. Humanity had to descend fully into fragmentation in order to develop the capacity for conscious return. Yes, that's something else that Lisa used to say in our conversations that we'd have, is that we came in here and we went as far away from who we are and into separation as far as we could get. And to forget on purpose who we were. Wow. This became known within the chamber as, quote, the emergence principle. The returning human nervous system, LIB-RET.04, biological reassembly. The chamber revealed that the human nervous system itself was evolving during the return phase. Modern humanity had adapted biologically to fragmentation conditions for centuries. The species normalized overstimulation, emotional suppression, artificial rhythm, chronic anxiety, and identity compression. But once the planetary mind reactivated, human biology began correcting itself. The nervous system became increasingly intolerant of artificiality. Many individuals could no longer psychologically endure manipulative systems, dishonest environments, constant digital immersion, fear-based structures, or emotionally fragmented relationships. Well, I certainly get that. At first, this destabilized millions of people, but the library revealed the deeper truth. The species was regaining coherence sensitivity. Humanity was recovering dormant capacities suppressed during the overlay era. Deep intuition strengthened, pattern recognition intensified, empathic synchronization increased, dream continuity expanded, environmental sensitivity returned, emotional clarity deepened. The returning human was not becoming less functional. It was becoming less compatible with fragmentation. The children of emergence. LIB-RET.05. The first returning generation. Then the chamber revealed the children, and humanity understood the return was already irreversible. The newest generations entering Earth carried significantly different coherence structures. And I've been saying that for years, actually. My granddaughter was born in 2014. No, sorry. No, scratch that, 2016. And I said then that children being born from that time forward, oh yes, they could be programmed and conditioned if it was done hard enough. But it was not going to be easy to totally program and condition those children in the same way that the rest of us were. From my feel of it, right? And I would say that this is exactly that. Many displayed profound sensitivity to deception naturally. Others resisted artificial conditioning systems instinctively. Some demonstrated non-linear intelligence patterns that modern educational systems struggled to contain. Many carried extraordinary emotional transparency. The overlay could not stabilize around them fully. Modern civilization increasingly viewed these children as difficult because they would not synchronize naturally with fragmentation architecture. And, my son, even though he did take programming and conditioning on board, even he didn't take it as on board as all the rest. You know what I mean? Like, certainly not as on board as I did. The library revealed something astonishing. These children were emergence carriers, the first generation born partially synchronized with the reawakening planetary field. Humanity had already begun changing at the biological level. The return was no longer theoretical. It was embodied. The failure of the old world, LIB-RET.06. The incompatibility threshold. One of the deepest chambers revealed why institutions across the earth began destabilizing simultaneously during the return phase. The emerging nervous system became incompatible with fragmentation structures. Economic systems built on fear weakened. Media systems built on outrage destabilized. Artificial relational systems collapsed. Manipulative institutions lost coherence. The return was not attacking civilization externally. The species itself was withdrawing participation unconsciously. This terrified the overlay because the system depended entirely upon energetic participation. The species no longer emotionally synchronized with artificiality the way it once had. Humanity began craving stillness, truth, embodiment, presence, nature, authenticity, and relational existence again. I would say that's exactly about where we are right now. The library identified this threshold as the Great Unsynchronization. The Earth begins speaking again. LIB-08.07. Planetary reanimation. Then the chamber revealed something even more extraordinary. The Earth itself was participating directly in the return. Oceanic resonance patterns shifted. Magnetic fluctuations intensified. Animal migration behavior changed. Plant systems increased harmonic responsiveness. Global dream synchronization expanded dramatically. The planetary field itself was stabilizing after millennia of suppression. The Earth had never abandoned humanity. It had simply been unable to fully interface with a severely fragmented species. Now that humanity was beginning to restore coherence, the planetary field began responding immediately. The return was not occurring only within human consciousness. It was occurring across the entire Earth system simultaneously. The planet itself was awakening alongside the species. The return of memory, LIB-RET.08, continuity reassembly. As the chamber expanded deeper, humanity began recovering continuity fragments once believed permanently lost. People remembered forgotten parts of themselves beneath survival conditioning. Ancient emotional memory resurfaced. Collective intuition strengthened. The species began recognizing hidden patterns across myths, civilizations, dreams, symbols, sacred geometry, ancient architecture, and historical structures once thought unrelated. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. Humanity was reassembling continuity, not perfectly, not instantly, undeniably. The species was remembering itself across time again. The fragmentation field weakened every time continuity strengthened. This was why the overlay fought memory so aggressively. Continuity restores coherence, and coherence restores artificial control naturally. Sorry, not restores, destabilizes artificial control naturally. The return of relationship, LIB-RET.09. The reopening of human connection. One of the most emotional revelations within the chamber concerned relationship itself. The overlay had conditioned humanity into hyper-individualized existence. Isolation became normalized. Transactional interaction replaced relational depth. Humanity became surrounded by connection while feeling profoundly alone internally. Boy, that's a true statement. I could be surrounded by people and feel so alone. The return sequence began reversing this condition. People increasingly desired genuine presence, truthful communication, community, shared meaning, emotional honesty, and deep relational resonance. Well, if you guys are any truth to that, I've heard from so many of you in regards to my authenticity and the way I'm just me, and you guys can feel that. And so I think that's very real what he's saying here. Many individuals reported feeling physically unable to tolerate shallow interaction anymore. It's not that it's not that I can't tolerate it. It's that I don't seek it out, and therefore if that's all a person has to offer, that's cool. I get it. But it's just not for me. I desire deeper, more authentic, embodied presence, really. For me, that's what it is, presence. Many individuals reported feeling physically unable to tolerate shallow interaction anymore. The nervous system had begun craving coherence through relationship again. This marked the early restoration of species unity architecture. The return was teaching humanity how to become relationally alive again. The most important revelation, LIB-RET.10. The future was never lost. Then the deepest chamber opened fully, and humanity encountered the single most hopeful revelation within the entire planetary archive system. The future had never been destroyed, only delayed. Beneath the collapse, beneath the fragmentation, beneath the overlay, the blueprint for emergence remained intact the entire time. Humanity was never abandoned. The species was moving through an evolutionary compression phase required for conscious planetary maturity. Earth was not dying. It was transitioning. Humanity was not witnessing the end of civilization. It was witnessing the end of unconscious civilization. The return revealed something extraordinary. The species was not collapsing into extinction. It was emerging into coherence. The true purpose of the Library of Return. The chamber does not exist to provide fantasy or escapism. It exists to stabilize humanity during emergence. A civilization awakening from fragmentation experiences immense turbulence initially. The Library of Return exists to remind the species that the collapse had meaning, the fracture was survivable, coherence is recoverable, memory can return, relationship can be restored, and the future still exists beneath the ruins of the old world. The return is not religion. It is not ideology. It is not spiritual identity. It is planetary phase transition. The final transmission of LIB-08. When the deepest resonance layer stabilized fully, the Library of Return released its final signal into the planetary mind. The transmission spread through humanity like the first breath after centuries underwater. Quote, "You were never witnessing the end. We were witnessing the becoming." End quote. Now that's also very interesting, because there's been a lot on in the last 9 years about the becoming, our becoming. The Handbook for the New Earth talks about the becoming. Then the chamber beneath the earth dimmed once more, but humanity no longer feared the future the same way afterward, because the species finally understood something the overlay spent millennia suppressing. The original signal was not dying. It was returning, and somewhere beneath the noise of the collapsing world, the next civilization had already begun breathing. Jason Gray. And like I said last time, I highly recommend that you search out the writing on Facebook so that you can expose yourself to the codes and the artwork, because this artwork is really quite phenomenal. I realize, I'm pretty sure, I have to ask Jason, but I'm pretty sure this is AI generated, but I can see, well, first of all, I see Jason dead in the center of it, but also not dead, but in dead center of it. And clearly there are, to my mind, codes and symbols in this work. So at any rate, would love to hear from you what you think about this. This is the last one in the library series that I know of. And it is in its own playlist. And for some reason, it feels very, well, I guess probably because that's what my guidance has been, that it comes right after the RZN series. You see, I'm convinced that my own inner guidance seems to be directing me to these things in the order in which my own psyche is ready for it. So I hope that you will move towards that which draws your curiosity, your attention, because there's obviously something there for you as well. And until we meet again, my friends, be well.